In this episode, I'm providing a life update on my recent trip to Peru, on the podcast and the consistency of me posting, not posting, and I'm sorry for that, but I promise I'll be better. But we're going to talk about that, and also just about my psychic business in general. I want to share a very strong disclaimer that in this episode, I talk about bodies of the deceased. So if you prefer not to listen to that, feel free to skip this episode. There's also a point in the podcast where I mention that I'm about to talk about this subject, and you can feel free to skip forward in the episode. I realize that may not be a comfortable topic for many, and I want to respect your comfort, and I want to respect how you feel about the topic. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, feels like a minute since I have done a podcast episode. The last one I published was at the end of May, and I'm going to use this episode to cover a few things that have gone on since the last personal episode I've done where I've opened up about my life or what's going on in my life, which seems to be the most common type of episode. And I promise to you all, I am going to go back to episodes that involve learning or sharing a learning I've had, or like, for example, I wanted to do an episode on the Ouija board and spirit boards. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they neutral? Does it depend on how you use them? I've been planning this episode for a very long time and I haven't gotten around to it. And so I do like talking about my life, but I also feel kind of weird that I keep talking about me. And I know that I am the host of the podcast. I know I've gotten a lot of feedback that people love when I get personal on the podcast. They appreciate me bringing my life experience into the podcast. And it seems that people appreciate that I share reflections about my own life and bring them back to, or tie them into, the journey of mediumship and the journey of spiritual growth. So I do love using this platform for that, but I also want to mix in some educational episodes. Not that I profess to be a teacher, or not that I think that a lot of the times it's just my opinion about something interesting, and maybe I'll sprinkle in some educational facts about something, like the history of the Ouija board, for example, and how people used it historically, but then I'll add my opinion. But still, I think it's probably helpful to many people that if they can hear episodes like that. So anyways, all that to say, I want to get back to doing that. I'm going to get real with all of you. It has been really tough energetically, mentally recently to do podcast episodes, and I haven't done creative social media content in 1 or 2 months, maybe 2 months. It just feels like I've been feeling my life is going well. It's just it's been hard to find the energy and the time. And I'm also in this period of a reckoning, I think. I think probably the last very personal episode that I published on this podcast, if I didn't say it in that episode, I'm going to say it now, and that is, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I was telling people that a lot before my birthday, before May 30, which is my birthday. And I was just feeling I was on cloud 9, and I thought I was thinking how I just never thought that I could ever come to this place of feeling so happy in my life and within myself, even though there are still struggles and there are still things that I'm healing from. And then 2 days after my birthday, I had a rude awakening. It's almost like I know the challenges I'm going through right now after my birthday, they're healthy for me. But it was just like, dang, I was feeling on cloud 9, and then boom, rude awakening. So there have been a couple things in my life that have been feeling very tough. Some are emotional, some are just logistical, and it's tough, and it's going to be a challenging rest of the year. But I'm holding on to how I've been feeling within myself. And something I was telling people around my birthday was, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, but I don't have a new job. I don't have a new car. I don't have a better home. I don't have a husband or a boyfriend. Nothing has really changed, but what changed is me. I changed. I changed how I view myself, how I love myself, how I appreciate myself, and how I value my energy and my time. That's what changed. So as I'm going through these significant challenges in my life at this moment and in the time to come, I'm holding on to that, holding on to the knowing that I am secure and safe within myself, regardless of what happens around me or to me. And I'm getting a little emotional because maybe I am meant to go through these new sets of challenges right now to sort of test that, to give it a test run. Like, Juan, now you know. It's like Spirit telling me, Juan, now you know what it's like to feel safe within yourself and to love yourself. Now, let's do that while going through what life can throw at you. So it's going to sound, I feel like I sound crazy saying this. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I feel blessed that I am going to go through these challenges with those things in mind. I feel so blessed and thankful. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And what am I going to do? I'm just going to try my best. One of the things that I have been thinking about is where I dedicate my time and energy. And I really dislike hyper capitalist, ultra capitalist thinking, but time is money, money is time. I keep complaining to myself, like, oh, I don't have any time, But then I'm dedicating the time I do have to things that really aren't fruitful. And not that I have to be productive all the time. There are just some things that I dedicate my time to that some leisurely things, like I could be doing other leisurely things that make me happier, for example. Or I could be actually working on the podcast or working on amping up my business or promoting my business. And I'm not. And then I feel like this is how I know that what I'm dedicating my time to isn't serving me. And it's not about being productive. It's about how do I feel after I do certain activities or dedicate my time to certain things. And to some things that I dedicate my time to, after I've done them, after I've dedicated the time, I feel like, oh, I could have spent my time better. And to me, that's a sign that I could be using that time for either something else that's leisurely or something that is productive, either or. And honestly, being productive with the podcast and my psychic business makes me happy. But I just haven't been, I think, dedicating the time that I should be, that I really want to. And I think for the next month, I'm going to have a lot of reflection time and a lot of time to consider, what do I want to do with this psychic business? What do I want to do with this podcast? And I've thought about, do I take a break from the podcast during the summer, and start a new season of the podcast in the late summer, early fall? As enticing as that sounds, there's a part of me that feels like, oh, having a break would be nice to think about things. But then another part says, Juan, you have the time to think about things while also recording for the podcast. Like, you have the time and energy. So you're just kidding yourself. Like, you don't really need to take a break. So I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to keep doing this podcast weekly for the time being and just see what happens. I have an interview lined up with somebody at the end of this month, and I have some topics like the Ouija board that I can start planning and recording. I really want to get back to planning social media content, and I know that I cannot. I don't have the energy to post something on social media every day. I just can't. It's just not. It's so easy to post something, but what the hardest part about social media content is recording it, editing it, adding the captions, because for me, captions are very important to add to a social media reel or video. It's choosing the right music, if there's going to be music, or the background instrumental. There's a lot that goes into it, and we make it look easy as social media content creators, but it really takes time and it takes a lot of energy. So I have a lot to think about, and I really want to dedicate my time to planning how to run my business. And another thing that's been really new in the last couple of months is I'm working at Earth Angel Crystal here in New York City every Saturday. And I'm really trying to put myself out there. And I have 2 consultations this coming weekend, actually. And I'm excited about that. But I need to do a better job of promoting that part of my psychic business. And the virtual psychic part of my business has been a little slow recently. And so I think it's on me to put myself out there more. And I just haven't been doing that. So I think this will be a time coming up in the next month for me to plan for the rest of the year how I want to run things and how I want to manage my time. In other news, I had an interesting, I'm going to switch gears now. I had an interesting experience going to Peru. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, I went to Peru to inter my grandmother, to put her to rest in a new family plot that's over there. Now, if you're expecting me to talk about Peru, that I met a shaman and I did ayahuasca, this is not that. Also, please don't do drugs unless you are doing it for the right reasons, for health reasons, for healing reasons, and you are seeking the counsel of someone who's professional in that field. I feel like I have to say that because ayahuasca is being thrown around everywhere now as a term, as an idea, as an activity. So just please be mindful if you do ayahuasca or anything else like that. Anyways, disclaimer over. I went to Peru. I did not see a shaman. I did not do an ayahuasca ceremony. I just went to lay my grandmother to rest with the rest of my family that's over there. Now, just for some brief context, my father was born in Ica, which is a desert region in Peru, 3 or 4 hours south of the capital city of Lima. I grew up going to Ica every 2 years of my life, if not every year, then every 2 years of my life, since I was 3 or 4 years old. So I'm very familiar with Ica. I grew up going to places that today are tourist traps, like Huacachina, which is an oasis in the desert in the middle of a bunch of sand dunes. Sandboarding and sand dune buggies. I did all of that growing up. Paracas and the beach areas on the Pacific coast. And yeah, it was lovely to go back, and it's almost like this trip, even though the majority of things that happened on this trip didn't happen to me, the things that were challenging, it was almost like I'll just say that every day on this trip, something dramatic came up or something seemingly negative came up. And it was mostly affecting other members of my family and not me. One thing seemed to affect me a little more because it had something to do with me, but I first want to share that, and I put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode regarding what I'm about to share, because it may be disturbing to some people, but it is, for me, an important thing to share about death and the physical body. So here we go. If you do not want to hear about the bodies of the deceased, then please skip forward 5 or 7 minutes. I went to Peru for this interment, and my grandmother passed in November of 2023, and she was cremated. And my parents kept her ashes here in the States while there were plans to take the current family plot in the city cemetery in Ica and move it to another cemetery in the city. And one of the things that had to happen, I'm not sure if it was an option for my father and his siblings or if it was a requirement that the cemetery had, but they asked the direct living descendants of those interred to witness the excavation of the coffins out from the ground, or the tomb. And in this case, they were going to put the cadavers into new coffins. So the family, the direct descendants, including my father, were asked to witness not only the taking out of the coffins, but the opening of them and the switch of the cadavers from those coffins to new coffins that were there. Now, I've never heard of anything like this happening in anyone else's lives that I know of. No one has ever told me a story like this or about an experience like this, but I was there for it. And for some reason, I feel icky talking about this, but I feel like it's important because it was a life experience I don't think I'll ever have again. It was extremely bizarre. It was weird. And it was also somewhat healthy for me. I saw them open the casket of my grandfather, whom I grew up with, and who passed in 2012, I think. As well as the casket of my uncle I am named after, my namesake, whom I've never met. And I saw them excavate the remains of my great-grandmother, whom I've never met. And it was very weird. And I'm not going to go into detail outside of just that. That's all you have to know. I'll just say that it was shocking. I was there to support my father because my father decided to be there for that with his siblings. One sibling didn't go, though. But it was... I mean, I love my grandfather who passed, but I do hope I don't have nightmares because it was. Most people would find it horrifying, but when I saw what I saw, and granted, I had been to his viewing, and I knew what was placed. Well, I had actually forgotten what was placed in his casket, and when they opened it, I saw those items in there. I'm like, oh, it took me right back to 2012, which was so bizarre. But of course, the body was in a different state of being. He did not look the way he did at his funeral. And it was so weird. But as I'm looking at these cadavers, it really hit me that, oh, there is nobody in these cadavers. They're not there. They're not there. They're dead. And they are somewhere else. The physical bodies are dead. There's no personality in these bodies. There's no being, no souls. Those souls are elsewhere. And then to a certain extent, I could feel my grandfather's soul. But when they opened the casket of my uncle, I was almost about to cry. And I think it's because I'm his namesake. I had heard so much about him growing up, him being around me, and he's looking out for you. And my dad told me that I reminded him of his brother, this uncle, and it just, when they opened it, I just started tearing up, and I think I was feeling his soul. I won't go into any more detail because I don't want to. I might have already made someone uncomfortable by having them listen to this story. I'm not going to lie, I kind of feel like, is this my story to tell? Because I was there supporting my father. But I think because I decided to witness this myself, and I had my own experience of this moment, and because it really hit me just how final death is in the physical world, not in the spiritual world, the physical world. I think I'm still getting over the shock of seeing what I saw, but I have a feeling it's going to stay with me subconsciously for a long time, because it's going to remind me that these physical bodies really don't mean much. We got to take care of them. They're vehicles we got to take care of. But it's like when we have a really nice car. We have a really nice car, and it's okay to be proud of your car, but don't be an asshole about it. Don't be a jerk and tell everyone you have the best car and your car's better than theirs. Same thing with bodies. Someone may have a nice body, you may have a nice face. It's okay, be proud of your nice body or nice face, but don't go around making people feel like they're less than you because you have a nice face, or like you are the hottest person on the planet, the most good-looking person on the planet. There's like this balance we have to strike. So appreciating ourselves and our bodies, appreciating the bodies that we live in, and also recognizing that it's not everything. And I think that's what that moment in that cemetery taught me. But it hasn't really hit me. And that's why I'm mentioning it on this podcast, because obviously this podcast is about death and dying, mediumship, psychic abilities, especially mediumship and the spirit world. And I think seeing that was it was alarming, and it was a teachable moment for me. I feel a little self-conscious having shared that. There's something very vulnerable about that I didn't expect to feel. I didn't expect to feel that vulnerable. In other news, after that, it just seemed like in amongst my relatives over there was a lot of drama, like unnecessary drama. And I think I mentioned on this podcast, I decided to separate from a friend because I just didn't want to energetically dedicate myself to something that just was bringing me down. And I think because I made that decision about that friend, I shared before that I felt like a lightness, like I felt light and happier having made that decision about that friend. And I think it set me up for just feeling moving forward like I can set boundaries, I can take care of myself energetically. And so being now in Peru, last week being in Peru, and all this drama and gossip happening, I just came back to this place of I don't got to deal with this. Like, this is not my stuff to deal with. This is not my story. And so that felt good, even though it was challenging. And it's all good. It's all good stuff. It's all in the spirit of learning and growing as a person, as a soul, and Juan's body. One thing that was a huge highlight, there's this one person in my family that I don't particularly enjoy being around. However, we ended up striking up a conversation with each other, and we were talking about this grandmother who had passed, and they told me that they had experienced many signs from her after she passed in November. And I started talking to them. They know that I work as a psychic medium here in the States. And we started talking about that. And lo and behold, this person who's around my age told me that they've been experiencing things since they were a little kid. And that they themselves have been reading a lot of psychic books, learning about the clairs. And I'm thinking, wow, I never knew this about this person. This is so cool. And I'm just thinking now, human beings are so interesting. We can have a human being in our lives that we just don't particularly enjoy being around. It's just they're not our kind of person. And yet they help us feel that life is so open and big, and there's so many things that are bigger than us. And talking to them, I mean, I know that there are things bigger than just my life and this physical world, but talking to them really reminded me, like, there's so many things that are bigger than this physical world. And there was another person around my age in the family, another person who knows that I'm a psychic medium, that I work as one. And they were telling me that they have felt and seen, they see the deceased and they feel things all the time since they were very young. And I didn't know these things about these two people in my family. So just goes to show that this is universal. And I told each of them, I believe we're all psychic. I believe we can all connect. It's just different. They're different. They're different levels of capability and ability. And it depends on how much we practice, depends on our upbringing, depends on how open we are. And it just brought home for me the fact that we are all psychic mediums. We can all tap in. It just may look different person to person. It was a wild trip, y'all. And on top of all that, because both of my grandparents are now passed on, I don't really have as much of a reason to go back to Peru to see them. And I have other relatives I can go see, but I think I'm not going to go back to Peru as much as I used to, because really I wanted to see my grandparents in Peru. And there was that part of it too. It felt very bittersweet because we were interring my grandmother. And I was also thinking about, when's the next time I'm going to visit Peru? Let me just soak this all in. Yeah. And now I am back, and it's been a whirlwind because I came back from travels on Monday. I went straight into the office Tuesday because it's a special in-office week for my 9-to-5 job. And now I'm here with you and thinking about what does the podcast, what does my psychic business look like for the next few months, for the rest of the year? And most importantly, what does my energetic, I guess I'll use this phrase. What does my energetic dedication look like for the rest of the year? How am I spending my time? How am I spending my energy? And I do believe I'm in a reckoning right now. And that sounds way more dramatic than it really is. I just feel like I'm at a crossroads, but a very healthy and a very fruitful crossroads, where I'm having these life challenges that have come up that seem daunting, but I'm going to get through them. I'm absolutely going to get through them. It's just going to feel very uncomfortable. Between that and my psychic business and the podcast, just at this crossroads of, okay, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to do with these parts of my life? And I'm very happy that I am at this crossroads, knowing who I am within myself and valuing myself more. And that's all I really hope for all of you listening, that you can feel the same way and just know that it's possible to love yourself and value yourself, and that that can help you get through the thing. And yeah, that's what's on my mind today. And again, I apologize that I've been inconsistent with the podcast. I think I'm going to keep posting every week, but I think I do need a mental reset this coming week and in the next few weeks while I am still recording the podcast. Just like, what am I doing here? And when I say that, it doesn't mean that I'm thinking of doing away with the podcast. I'm not going anywhere. And also, we're going to celebrate our 3rd year of Third Eyesight in 2025. So I ain't going no freaking where. Okay? What I mean by what I want to do with this is it's just asking myself, how can I set up a better schedule for myself to publish the podcast on time? How can I set up a better system for planning content for social media, planning content for the podcast, recording? And I need a better system. I'm even thinking of my website also. Like, do I really need to pay this much for my website? Can I just have something simpler? So by the end of the summer, maybe the midsummer, I want something to feel different. Whether it's the systems I have in place to set myself up for recording and publishing the podcast and social media content, or maybe it's a new web page, a new website. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know, but I want something to change. And I think I owe it to myself because I really love what I do as a psychic medium. I love this podcast. And I love the feedback that you all give me about the podcast. I really appreciate it. And by the way, if you want me to talk about something or answer a question you have, please DM me on Instagram. Please send me an email through my website. I will answer your question. And if I can't answer your question, I will still talk about it. Because I think it's good to engage with you all. I love engaging with you all. So more to come on that. And I just thank you for being a listener. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for reaching out to me and asking me those questions and telling me what you think about the podcast and what I do. It's very rewarding for me. And I just hope that all I can hope for is that I keep bringing people to this place of comfort in knowing that they can connect and that we're not alone. We're not alone. And I just want to say I love you all. I feel sappy tonight, and that's okay. But I love you all very much. And you don't know how much your support means to me. I remember when I started this podcast, maybe like 10, 12 people downloaded it, the first episode, and then it grew really fast. And am I where I want to be with the podcast? No. But I'm also just enjoying it. I enjoy the process of making it. And I think that for me, matters more than the amount of listeners. If I had to choose between 100,000 listeners per month and enjoying what I'm doing on the podcast, I would rather enjoy doing the podcast, because who wants to do something they dislike just to get clout and listeners? Now, to have both would be nice, but I think that just comes with time, and I'm just trusting the process. And maybe that will never happen, and that's okay, because I'm enjoying the process anyways. And thank you for enjoying the process with me. So I love you all. God bless. Have a beautiful rest of your day. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.